Welcome to Sketchy. My number is 14.
I'm Mr. B.
Today we're going to be talking about urine. I guess we got no choice. The whole world is talking about urine, and probably the most explosive story of 2017 so far with a Russian intelligence report. Well, I'm sorry. Alleged report. Third hand from some British intelligence guy that retired working for some dude. Anyways, we'll get into that. But it alleges that old Mr. Trump likes to golden showers. So we're going to be talking about that, because you will be talking about that for months to come. We'll also talk about how Disney ruins movies. And we'll also be talking about Russia and its involvement in world politics and how it's playing chess while everybody else is playing some dumbass checkers. We'll also mention briefly some animated movies that I would like to call out as violent hot pieces of garbage they are. But first, sir... What are you drinking? We're both drinking the same thing.
Sapporo,
the Japanese beer. It's
premium.
It now owns many of our beer companies. It actually owns Sleeman's, I believe.
Really?
And they've recently, I don't know if it's in Canada, but I read a report that they're laying off like a few thousand employees. So
oh boy.
I guess we should be drinking their beer to support their initiative. Nice.
Sapporo, their initiative.
Let me ask you this question: if you're out there, this is for people out there.
I prefer Kirin Japanese beer if I have to go mass market.
Okay, but let me ask you this. Let me ask this question to the audience before you tell me what you prefer in all your Japanese alcohol. The question is this: do you think that in the future there will be more jobs or fewer jobs?
Ooh, good question.
Because it always seems to be fucking shrinking to me. This company lays off people. This company lays off people. This company lays off tens of thousands of people.
Well, that sort of bucks the trend, though, that we saw, right? Or at least what Obama said in his final days, or is saying in his final days, that he had the longest period of job growth, if you count the lowest point after he took office.
Right, but here's the thing they never talk about with job growth. What are those jobs? Mostly part-time bullshit fucking retail stores that are all going out of business. Why do you think they're all going out of business?
Well, whatever's happening now, I think the dominant trend for the next few decades is going to be AI. It'll be the next revolution, right?
And
automation.
Is that going to give you jobs? And before you say AI repair, you need one fucking guy who repairs the AI repair bot. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's not, you could probably have an AI to fix itself, honestly.
Maybe.
They're going to be tight, those AI.
It's going to be a self-closed loop.
Yeah. No, I heard a viewpoint today that I thought was interesting. It wasn't the creative arts that this person thought would survive, because we're seeing all kinds of creativity come out of AI, music and art, and just wonderful.
And food.
They thought that coaching professions, human elements, emotional things.
Oh, no way.
Would survive, and I'm skeptical about that.
Fuck that shit. They're already coming out with robots now that are basically there to boost your self-confidence.
The legal profession apparently has a big target on its back, because what can scrub through centuries of case law better than a computer?
LegalBot has found that your case is irrelevant in 1 nanosecond. All right. Man, in the future, you're going to be convicted in picoseconds.
Well, we're hearing about these mega companies that produce, smartphones, laptops, cars, that are... Some are under pressure, especially in the States, to bring factories back to America from China and Mexico and so on. And a lot of them are considering fully automating everything. Just getting robots to do the whole assembly line. Factory in a box.
No more jobs.
Right. You might have
no more fucking jobs. And you know what the first thing that happens when there are just no more jobs? The thing about the economy is that even Adam Smith or all of these fucking economic geniuses, they can't even tell you why it all works. It's still a question mark. I mean, Adam Smith called it the invisible hand of the market, right? Like just this force that allows, for instance, money to grow and accrue, wealth to accrue somehow. Like it breaks the laws of what we consider to be physics, right? Economics is different because it's based on subjective value. So human beings can just invent stuff. But all of it is reliant on the fact that people will have things to do and needs. And AI kind of fucking throws that right out the goddamn window.
Well, yeah, and, the utopian future where nobody has to work because we have robots to do our jobs.
Yeah, that's not great.
it only works if every person who used to have a job and an income has a stake in the output of their robot, or you have a minimum wage given to you by the government or something like that. So AI alone could probably create some joblessness. Some, or maybe a lot.
Yeah, well, in China's already... China's financial crisis is going to come first because China's mostly a manufacturing country. So when they replace their labor with almost entirely robots, which happens in the spans of like millions of fucking people. Like we have like 2,000 people were laid off. In China, it's like 1 million people were laid off. Well, a fucking city got laid off, yo.
Maybe the only, people will still crave human experiences. Maybe the service professions, wait staff, bartenders, those will be...
Well, let's take a look at McDonald's. What is McDonald's first and latest move? These fucking kiosk things, press the fucking button and it's probably going to come out of a damn machine.
Oh, and you know what? Those are a better experience. I love those things. Because you don't have to...
Not some dirtbag teenager.
If some mistake happens, it's probably my fault, not like a miscommunication, which happens all the time at McDonald's.
So here's what you're saying.
And people with social anxiety.
What are you saying, You're basically saying we would prefer to fucking interact with machines. We just hate humans. We hate ourselves.
Yeah.
We kind of hate ourselves.
That's nothing new. We hear people say all the time, oh, I hate people, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. You know why people say that? You know why?
Because they hate themselves.
No, because you're in a state in your fucking life where you take people for granted. Let me tell you something. If it wasn't for people, you would have no food. If it wasn't for people, you would be fucking frozen to death. You were so reliant on other people in a constant way that you take it for granted. You're like, I hate people.
And
what, the people who would rescue you if you were in trouble? Those people, that's who you hate? You fucking ignoramus?
You're right. We, more than ever, I think we treat people as objects and as ends, or as means to an end.
Well, we're solipsistic motherfuckers. That's the problem.
Look at something like Tinder, massively successful, but it really does objectify people and simplifies.
Well, it brings out the worst in them too. Their fucking shallowness,
right?
Their inability to commit. I'm like, Tinder's all about that shit.
And I'm not saying we should change that because human nature is what it is, and people are on it. If you're single, you're probably on Tinder, right? Okay,
but let's speak about human nature before we get into our even first topic. Let's talk about the fact that I think that the big problem that we have, whenever we're trying to identify something, like how today is like all obsessed with identity because we realize one thing: if you were to just identify as human, you have to accept the good and the bad, and just being human isn't good enough. All right, for people.
No.
It kind of stinks because you realize human beings kind of suck. As good as they can be, they can also be just as bad. Right. So this is why somebody wants to be a Christian or Muslim, because they think, I can be better than a human being. I can be this elevated form, right? We don't want to be human. That's the fucking truth.
It's just people tricking out their real life avatar.
Yeah, right.
Basically.
Or just, speaking of Avatar, remember the movie Avatar? Remember how people were so depressed that Avatar, the fucking world, didn't exist, that they were killing themselves? Like, this is how much they fucking hate their own world.
I saw the movie, but I don't remember that part. You know that blind spot in my brain for media.
Or for the world in general.
Pop culture.
Wow. I think you rely on me to kind of tell you what the fuck is going on, man, because you are blind. You don't see it.
I live on a different plane.
I really don't even understand. You want to do a fucking documentary.
I don't even identify as a human, okay?
You want to do a documentary on modernity, and you understand nothing about what fucking modern tastes are. You goddamn weird, man.
It takes an outsider.
I don't think so.
It does.
Most of the documentaries, you'll find that these are people that have deep involvement in something and not some fucking ignorant outsider that comments on it.
At the end, I'm just going to unzip my lizard suit and I'm going to slither away into the sunset. Boom.
Well, I was thinking, speaking of lizard suit, did you see that video? I just saw this the other day. I hope that we can link to this. It was a video of this monkey, this troop of monkeys. And there's a new habit now in zoology of creating these robot animals that are spy animals. So they'll look like the real thing, and sometimes even these societies are going to accept these robot creatures that make weird buzzing noises into their fucking societies, and they start acting normal, because all animals don't act normal when the camera's around, because they know a camera's around, or at least something weird's happening. So they showed a troop of monkeys with this sort of like weird little robot baby monkey that had cameras in its eyeballs. And at one point, one of the monkeys decides that they want to take care of it. And when he grabs it, he actually drops it. And it falls many, many feet until it hits the ground. And then all the monkeys think it's dead. And then all of a sudden, there's this weird, solemn fucking moment where all the monkeys get together. They start giving each other hugs to comfort each other. These are little lemur monkeys. These are not fucking chimpanzees, man. These are tiny-brained lemur monkeys.
Well, you know what?
Freaking out about fucking death.
When I see that, I see like maybe a prototypical version of our societies.
Sure.
Like the tight-knit family, the tight-knit troop, the tribe.
No, there's
no coincidence there. I mean, they're... What do biologists call it? They're socially affiliated animals, and so are we.
Oh God, that's why I said you need people, man.
Right,
You're
and,
so
and
dependent
you
on
know
them.
maybe today us humans or people who identify as something more than human have forgotten that we need each other in that basic.
Do you know what
way.
movie I think everybody
We
should
take
watch
each other
again?
for granted.
Do you know what movie I think everybody should watch again? Crash. Because here's the thing.
Didn't see it.
We've actually, of course you didn't fucking see it. It's a Paul Haggis movie, and it really is just a movie that centers around racism, I guess.
I'm familiar. I remember watching the trailer, I think.
You're familiar with the trailer?
Right.
Sit down, man.
It was a Sandra Bullock film, wasn't it?
Sandra Bullock was in it, sure.
That much
Wow.
I know. Check that out.
So you have a lot of opinions having watched the trailer, you fucking idiot.
Listen, let me tell you about
Why don't you
Crash.
sit down and shut up? Anyways,
It's about racism.
I sometimes feel as though some movies come out too early, sometimes they're too late, because or maybe they're just kind of like they're onto something that the rest of us are slow to catch on. And I think that these days, what we're slow to catch on is that race relations, if you want to call it that, have gone backwards.
Bananas.
Like if you really were to think about Martin Luther King's speech, where he says that he dreamed of a world in which the content of your character was the most important thing about you. And when you read articles about as a black woman, as a gay man, as a yada yada, you start realizing this has nothing to do with your content of your character and everything to do with your either your physical identity or your sexual identity.
Yeah.
Things that you don't even get to fucking decide, and now somehow they're the most important fucking things about you.
Well, yeah, like we're focused on these externalities because of prior injustices. I assume that's what causes this phenomenon.
I think you mean externals, because externalities are
right.
unintended
well,
consequences.
how we're perceived in an external way.
Yeah.
Right? Not our intrinsic, not our character.
Well, but
right?
it's not even
How
chosen
we're
by
seen
you.
by others.
This has been chosen by other people because now identity is the most important thing. And what people don't realize is that all of this need for identity really comes from the fact that this is all about power dynamics. Racism is actually much more of a perception of power groups than it is about anything else. So when you have people who say, well, black people can't be racist because racism is about the systematic oppression of a group, all that tells you is that they're saying because we have no power, we cannot affect the empowered. We can therefore not be accused of the same behavior. So all it is it's a perception of power and not a perception of, like any other trait per se.
Okay, so I do see what you're saying, but it seems like we're splitting hairs over definitions.
No, it's very
like
important
institutional racism versus I don't know what you call just like person to person. Looking at someone's appearance racism, prejudicial racism or something. Those are two different things. So I think there's a little bit of wordplay conflating one type with the other.
But you have to understand that people have been trying to change the definition of racism to make it specifically about power struggles within classes, but
that's
identified.
why adjectives matter. Adjectives matter.
Sure,
You can describe exactly. And
Hey, why don't you start
matters.
that group?
Communication matters.
Adjectives matter. That because that's the real victim here. I mean, forget all this racial politics. What is the real fucking victim today? The truth? How about that? Truth matters?
Yeah,
I'd love that fucking
I-
shirt.
I find it interesting. I think we should track this point over the next few episodes or few years even. What's going on with the with character falling out of favor? Like, how often do we talk about someone's character? It used to be like you watch a show like Mad Men, even just the 50s or whatever, not too long ago, And it was a theme. People would talk about each other's character more than their external
As
identities.
a social creature, you would say, like, even in this monkey world, let's take those monkeys that, freaked out about the death of spy robot monkey. Well, in their society, reputation is everything. Who gets to eat, when they get to eat, has a lot to do with your behavior and the health of your fucking tribe as a result of that behavior. So that's just another word for reputation. How is it that you handle yourself relative to your fellows, and how does that influence your ability to not only survive but also thrive within that group?
Well, it reminds me again of this this notion of System 1 and System 2 thinking. I think we talked about it a few episodes ago. The Nobel Prize winning economist, I think his name was Daniel Kahneman, wrote a book about the systems in the brain that are really fast and they're ancient.
Oh yeah,
really,
the emotional part
the
of your brain, like,
and basically like
lizard brain.
All the intuition that you build up basically feeds into that system. So when you have an important decision to make or you meet someone for the first time, you're going to go with your gut first of all. And if you really try hard, you can kick in this much newer part of the brain, the gray matter, to really calculate and almost reason out using words that are slow what you think about someone. So the monkeys seem to be exhibiting a very, like, as you would expect, a System 1 style reaction. I want to be trustworthy. I want to be liked. I want to eat. I want to be able to mate. I better just take care of this dead monkey and fit in. And the whole identity politics thing seems like much more of a clumsy, like, we don't really know what's going on. There's a lot of emotion there. It seems like System 2 thinking. There's no real clarity. It's not obvious what the right behavior is today when it comes to identity politics. There's plenty of mistakes being made. I think it's just not a phase, but just a consequence of our brain. We're not used to societies that are bigger than 100 people. Like, in an evolutionary sense.
But I mean,
we're not.
That's unfair. That's unfair because here's the thing: when we look at the speed of evolution, right? Would you say 10,000 fucking years is a good amount of time for a species to get it?
Like,
because I think it is.
A brain gene, like culturally, yeah, that's a long time. But
no.
A gene controlling the brain might pop up every 5,000 years. So it's really not that long.
No,
10,000 years is not that long.
No, I really, because sure, 5,000 years. In the sense that there's not a lot of evolutionary pressure. But you know what? One of the theories that has been coming back hard in evolution is something called punctuated equilibrium. Really, this idea that evolutionary changes are not this gradual thing.
Oh, right.
But more of a shocking change that itself becomes, that takes over gradually because obviously it has to spread itself gradually because it can't, the mutation can't be immediate among all the others. Entities. Right. What I'm trying to argue from that is that the elements of ourselves that are sort of like trying to adapt to larger societies. Look, we've been living in fucking cities that are bigger than 10,000 people for 10,000 fucking years. Okay, let's not undermine that achievement and just suddenly assume that we haven't developed any kind of instinct to do that. I think the real issue that we're having actually now, you almost touched on it actually. What you touched on is that we are in a very unique time right now where the old institutions that we used to trust, be it religious or even government, we are beginning to question or to totally abandon. Now, this is why the quest for identity from people is just such a fucking mess, because when you're not giving people this clear identity, now they're lost. Like, I'm not a Sumerian, I'm not a Akkadian.
Right.
Like, if even the idea of countries begins to erode in the mind of people, and we've already discussed this, that the fucking title of just human is not goddamn good enough. I think that now they're so lost, they were willing to grasp at straws. And the only straws being fucking thrown are from the extremes. So you got identify yourself by your racial politics. Well, how can you blame some fucking white supremacist who followed your advice to the letter?
Yeah, well, I think we're sort of touching on the same point. This is a really interesting topic, and we can't say everything about it today. But I think the monkeys know what to do automatically in their society. They're built with that, call it System 1, fast reaction, gut instinct kind of system. And maybe they have like 1 or 2%, they're peppered with this higher order thinking where they can kind of reason, but not nearly on the same scale we can.
Well, they still have a walnut-sized goddamn
So-
brain.
Like a good example of this was I think it was from the book was this guy Kahneman's book. If you're talking on the phone, you can walk down the street and you can pay attention to a million things. You can eat a fucking hot dog. You can,
Which is kind of amazing.
It's kind of amazing because you're having perhaps a very in-depth emotional conversation talking about
you could do that while
things.
driving.
You can do that while driving, listening to music, eating.
It's fucked up.
It's amazing. Like, we're built with that. It's
That's
automatic.
nuts.
But someone asks you to divide 1038 by 16, you're probably going to stop on the street,
Drop everything.
drop everything,
Turn the volume down.
and perform this really difficult mental task, relatively speaking. And I think that's sort of, it's painful, it's very costly, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, and we can't do it all
but
the
just
time.
only because it's outside of your habit. Like, you could claim that, for instance, the mathematics of you trying to figure out human relationships themselves or navigation, there's some complex quote-unquote math going on. It's just that what you're really talking about is this abstract thought that we have.
It's the gray matter thought.
Yeah,
It's the type of thing like deriving an equation or something, or sitting down at a typewriter and writing and mapping out a complex problem or something. It's not intuitive. It takes a lot of mental labor.
This is what I
and
think.
so just let me finish here.
Yeah.
I think what's happening with culture is we can't spend all day doing those heavy mental calculations. The monkeys are free of that burden, but we're not. So we used to live in smaller societies where you just sort of derived your identity from the country you lived in, and then you didn't have to think about it again. But now it's totally different. We're on the internet. We have international friends. We travel. We have business. Our news connects us to the entire world and different kinds of people. So our identity is always under question. It's very mentally taxing. There's no obvious answer, and it's just like we're not prepared like the monkeys are to know what to do tomorrow. We have this sort of amazing gift that we can reinvent ourselves. Like, someone could live in a very oppressive small town in sub-Saharan Africa or something. Who knows? Or I just picked that randomly. Some oppressive part of the world. Family's religious,
Racist.
small, right, and small town, if you will, or small village, and they could reinvent themselves. I don't know, become an engineer, move to New York. Like, we have this amazing gift that we can totally transform our lives, but it also comes with the burden of not being sure of who we are. And we argue about identity politics now because we're free to do so.
But the weird thing is that right now our society just reminds me of a fucking lost teenager that's trying to be all goth and thinking that by doing so they're being very different. Do you know what I mean? Like, how many people out there, I feel bad for people who have decided that they're really going to identify strongly with one thing. And I say this having once been a fairly big part of the atheism community, having even called myself, quote unquote, the good atheist.
That was your goth, buddy.
So I have had a habit of taking on identities. And what I've learned from that
you have to.
is that by taking identities, what the long-term consequence of you doing that is you're going to realize that the more you're kind of submerged in the culture that you suddenly jump into, the more you realize that you have less in common with the same people that pretend that they're the same group as you as just some fucking other person who doesn't. Like, that's and once you start reaching that critical mass where you're like, shit, I seem to be agreeing more with people outside of this little group that I identify with than inside, then you realize, oh yeah, it's really not about identifying with the group. I just need to have a pretty fucking healthy ego about myself, my place in society, and the rest, this whole identity shit, it was just some insecure fucking asshole part of my personality that needed, I don't know, certainty about my place in fucking society. I don't know. I guess we all need to, like those monkeys we were talking about, I'm sure they have a fucking clear idea who the alpha monkey is and where their stratification is in society. Like, they are fucking clear about that shit.
You probably won't find a goth monkey who wants to move out of the tribe, right? Trying to reinvent themselves, going through a phase. No, they're doing monkey.
They're doing monkey business.
Doing monkey hard, yeah.
Monkey business is monkey business.
Well, I don't know about you, but like I was sort of taken aback by and surprised by this whole identity politics thing happening. And I understand the reasons for it a little bit, but not in a direct way. Like if you're being prejudiced against, if the world is acting against you because of your external identity, I can understand why you would think about that 24/7, and you would want other people to think about it too.
But the truth is, B, I don't know if you can. I've known you a long time, and I can say that look, you were the guy in high school that had no clique.
Right, I know. And
you were the clique list.
That's my point. Like I watched a TED Talk the other day that was talking about how when men think of themselves, they think of being a human, and when women think of themselves, they think of themselves as being a female human, like a slightly altered version of human, just because of the imbalance in our society. And that kind of struck a chord. I'm still thinking about it. I don't quite know what it means to me, but I never grew up thinking of myself as a white male. I just thought of myself as a human, and I was interested in things, and I really didn't spend much time.
Also not really.
I didn't spend much time thinking about myself.
You're not
really.
a fucking normal guy.
I know.
I'm more normal than you, and I'm fucking off the fucking scale here, bro.
Right.
But look, okay, so you do not have a good
maybe
perspective.
It's a privilege thing, is how we call it today.
Well, I would
not
say
having to think about your external identity.
You want to know what your privilege was, and I recommend everybody, if you can have your high school career be like Mr. B's career, you are in for a motherfucking treat. Okay, because let's just say Mr. B was voted most likely to succeed in our high school because everyone wanted to be, like, it didn't matter what clique you were. The jocks wanted to be friends with you because you had some jock ability. You did the long distance running shit, right? Mm-hmm. So you had that in of being like, well, I can be sporty in the way that I want to. And you also did a lot of fucking juggling, which is very physical and something that nobody at your level was able to even fucking come close. I mean, like, when you're really trying, you could do like 6 balls well.
Seven, yeah.
6 balls well and
6 balls well, 7 balls in a pinch.
Yeah. Look, I'm not trying to underplay. I know what your levels are.
Right.
All right. So, I mean, 6 goddamn balls. I mean,
but I certainly didn't see myself as a jock.
But it didn't matter. I liked those because activities. The whole thing was that you floated above everyone.
If anything, I considered myself more on the side of intellectualism.
But we were lucky though, because I think that in our high school, the people praised intelligence more than anything else. Think about the other person who was most likely to succeed. She would have probably gone into having a pretty successful life if she didn't have an unfortunate accident that took her away from this world, unfortunately for her. But, I think we were in a very unique generation where people had a big amount of respect for intelligence, more so than I think nowadays, which people don't respect. And you were considered the smartest of everybody in the school, so everybody wanted to have a piece of Mr. B. That was how it was. And this is also why you and I were only somewhat friends, not very close. I was on the more periphery because, man, I mean, I was real unpopular. I cannot stress this fucking library club,
Library club?
Oh, yeah. And I like to deny the fact that I was not actually part of the library club. But this is a lie. The truth is, the library staff was in love with me. Me and my buddy Mike. They let us rule the library. We were the funny, smart guys, and we got to do everything we wanted in the library. Now, being a king of the library is not cool.
Hey-o.
I'm sorry, even if nerddom is cool, being king of the library.
Before there was Google,
there
was library.
Getting free donuts when nobody else in the school gets free donuts, but you do because the staff loves you. It's still the library, man.
When you're 15, a free donut is a free donut.
I mean, but back in the day when donuts were rare, though.
Right.
They weren't at every street corner.
And our high school was basically designed like a prison.
It was. There was a fence that pointed inwards.
Barbed wire pointed in.
You can't get the fuck out. And if you snuck out, there was actually a guy whose job it was to fucking track you down.
Yes, he was.
Was he good?
Stone cold killer, man.
Was he good? Was he like?
I tried to sneak out once, and he had eagle eyes.
Was he like the guy from? Oh, wait, you wouldn't know this movie, but No Country for Old Men, like a weird, creepy.
He was
he's
like
gonna
a
find
SEAL Team 6 tracker.
Oh, was he dismembering people and murdering people? We're gonna
Who
talk
knows?
that next show. Actually,
Who knows?
Did you hear about this, by the way?
I did not.
Yeah, so reports came out of it that SEAL Team 6. They're a bunch of fucking psychos out for revenge. We're going to talk about that next show.
SEAL Team 6.
But we should probably get into our first topic, which we haven't talked about, and it's what, minute 30?
It is. It's almost exactly minute 30.
See, I'm good with time.
God.
So let's talk about our first topic, because we wanted to talk about character. And let's talk about the character of your president-elect in 8 days, soon to be your president.
Wow, what a fiasco today. That was... I wish I wasn't working so hard today, because I would have been riveted to that press conference. It was like a farce of all farces.
The moment, maybe an hour when the story broke, I was messaging you like a madman, being like, this is the fucking story right here. And the reason I thought that this was the story is, and I think we only have like 5 shows, and we already mentioned this on one of our past shows, is that this was our pre-election show, was that I had assumed that 24 hours before the election, the most salacious materials would have been released. I didn't know that there was more to this political agenda and people within the FBI that actually wanted to see Donald Trump win, which is why you saw that Hillary email leak when the real fucking piece of news didn't. Because keep this in mind, what we're about to talk about was known to the FBI at the same fucking time at the whole Hillary might be reinvestigated shit you already forgot. Yeah.
Right.
The real piece of news that was supposed to the thing that would have really tipped the scales that right now no one can stop talking about is this report,
this giggly little pee-pee party.
Yeah. So let's talk about some history. So first and foremost, this report was not actually done by the Democrats. This was actually paid for by opponents of Donald Trump, who felt so strongly, in fact, about how negative his candidacy was, that they wanted to see what kind of dirt he has. And while you might think this is something sinister, this is always done with every presidential candidate. You need to know what the dirt is, because dirt could be used to blackmail people, and that includes presidents, right? You don't want your president to be in a blackmailable position. And the report that was released, which is unsubstantiated as of now, that doesn't mean it won't be substantiated in the future or basically shown to be complete fucking fabrication, but nevertheless, it is so explosive, so crazy that I think that as soon as people read it, they're like, this can't be real. So the story is that, well, there's multiple elements to it. The most important being that Russia has leverage over Trump. And that leverage is that, I'm not sure which year, but Donald Trump visited a hotel in Russia that President Obama had stayed in.
The Ritz.
President Obama had stayed in this suite. And so in order to defile it purposefully, the report alleges, Donald Trump hired prostitutes in order to urinate on them on the bed, and also I think later defecate on the bed.
Oh, really?
In order to make a kind of,
I think it was to urinate on each other on the bed.
Right.
I don't know about on him. Probably on him.
No, not on him. I think he was maybe urinating on them as well. But the whole act was meant as a kind of weird sexually derogatory.
Yeah, it was meant as it was weaponizing like fetish sex as an insult. Yeah, that's Donald style. That's how he rolls.
Right.
Yeah.
So, as you can imagine, this was published. Well, originally some of the report was actually published, I think it's the Washington Post. I'm not sure which news organization, but they had only released some of
summary.
It. BuzzFeed decided to release the whole thing.
Fuck it, we're doing the whole thing.
It's kind of like that whole WikiLeaks attitude thing. What's our journalistic integrity worth?
The faucet's already leaking. I might as well turn it all the way.
And there's a lot of interesting fucking articles you should read about, is this ethical in journalism and what's the deal? I even watched when CNN broke the news. Here's what's hilarious. Okay, so here's how CNN says that we maintained journalistic integrity. They had a disclaimer they repeat about 3 times while they broke it. They said, an unconfirmed report They were very clear to make sure that they said that the report was unconfirmed. Second, they also said that these are allegations and not confirmations.
That are salacious, kinky, and you're going to want to watch
But once they were done that, then they just basically reported on what was said. So it's kind of like how news reporters said, I gave his Miranda rights, I could beat the shit out of him, right?
Well,
a bit like that.
Yes and no. Like, there is a difference between saying Trump hired prostitutes to pee on each other at the Ritz-Carlton in Moscow to defile the bed that the Obamas have reportedly stayed in. There's a difference between saying it that way and saying there exists a report circulating claiming this to be true.
Exactly?
It is different because the latter is a fact. There is a report circulating.
Okay, so what I'm suggesting is, while you're right in a very literal sense,
well, I think in journalism,
it's your get out of jail free card.
These are ethical questions.
It's a get out of jail free card. And here's the thing: this report is something that actually Mr. B predicted back in our very first episode. If you go back to our election episode, which is full of wisdom, we correctly predict the winner, by the way, many weeks before everybody else. Oh, the polls didn't guess. Well, Sketchy did.
Sketchy did.
And not only did Sketchy get everything right, we got right about how it would happen, how the Comey fucking emails would influence it. And Mr. B said something that even at the time I didn't agree with. He said that surely Russia had some kind of sexual perversion video
yes,
that might include, you said though, it was a 15-year-old or underage girl, which
right.
is like, I mean, that might still exist.
We don't know the age of the urinators. We don't know the age of the urinators.
But that was like, I mean, that's Prediction City, people.
That's
you
Prediction
come
City.
here first to hear the news that will happen. Not the news that is happening. No. The news that will happen.
90% of what we say won't happen, but that 10%...
Oh, man, we're going to boast about it. Boast about it so good. So, yes, Mr. B, you are fucking Nostradamus of debauchery. But here's the thing.
I'll take it.
But think about this, though. To be fair, if you're rich, you are the most compromised human being on Earth. Because what rich person hasn't lived his eyes wide shut life and got recorded doing it?
Right.
Like, okay, good example. How compromised is John Travolta? He's part of a fucking cult who purposefully takes information to blackmail you with, right? Mm-hmm. This is why there's no Scientologists in fucking politics. The dirt's out, and
just can't do it.
And the religious organizations got it, but the dirt's out there. So if you're rich and powerful, and you have all this money, and you're probably bored with life, you have done everything. You probably paid money to eat human flesh. I mean, that's just you know you probably did.
No strings attached.
Exactly. You're like, you know what? I just want to taste what human beings taste like. I have a fucking $1 billion. You're gonna make it happen.
So as long as you tell me it's ethical, I'll eat it. Just tell me it's ethical.
So I'm like, if I was a hacker, my full-time job would basically be to extort the rich, because they all have dark, horrible secrets.
The price they're willing to pay to make the fucking problem go away is a fucking rounding error compared to the money they throw at their weird good times.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
So a rich person is almost always compromised.
It's like a service charge.
And I have to imagine, like, okay, I've never been mega wealthy, but I'm gonna just put out there that probably the mega wealthy are forced into all kinds of weird rituals or whatever, right? Because here's the thing, it's like, look at a motorcycle gang or even a fraternity or whatever. Everybody's got some fucking horrible shit planned for you because they need a test of faith. They need, like, to know that you're committed. So what do? They probably say, like, if you want to be part of our club, man, we got to know some dark shit. Hey, you killed your mom to get the inheritance? Sweet. Okay, now you know that I am secretly a lizard man. Okay,
You're
I don't
welcome.
know. That last one I probably just made up. But, you know, when you're in a club of mega powerful people, there's probably this weird compromise that you have to sort of, like, be like Superman, where, you know, like, you gotta tell people that are on your side what your weakness is in case they got to bring you down. You know what I mean? Like, who knows what kind of weird pacts you're making in the halls of power that you and I will never fucking walk into. And if you did, you're dead. You know? You did it accidentally, and now they're onto you, and you're dead. You're like, you're a gray spot. Yep. So let me ask you this question. What do you think the accuracy on a scale of 1 to 10 is of this report?
All right, so
Try to be fair. Try to not be like, totally anti-Trump. Try to be fair to the man. What are the odds is that he really did this? Knowing his character, knowing like what you know about him, what is the odds that that might be true?
Well, the first thing I thought when I read it was, holy cow, this is fucking ridiculous. I knew it. This is...
It confirmed my bias.
Right.
All right, well, that's fair. That's a fair
But my second thing was, okay, so this is a very narrow report. If you think about it, it comes from a few sources. It's this ex-British MI6 guy who was apparently working under contract for the Republicans to find some dirt.
And then later,
that's interesting.
And let's also say that as soon as the contract was abandoned by the Republicans, he got picked up by Democratic fucking people. So did the report change in that interim? We don't know.
Apparently he's credible, right? That's what the first day when this broke, everyone was talking about how credible this agent's work was.
Well, my thought is that
he's an ex-agent.
If the Republicans had hired him to find some dirt, my assumption is that they would have been really careful to try to make sure that the information they got was legitimate because they wanted to bring him down.
Yeah, it was in their interest.
I think that the problem that they had was that the result they were probably looking for something that was more, let's say, financial ties or something that could because the Republicans sex scandals is something that they really just stay away from because it never works in their favor.
It never works in their favor. There's always some anti-gay
like a Democrat
Southerner who's
busted. A Democrat can survive a sex scandal. Bill Clinton did. Oh, you fucking got sucked off by that intern and lied about it? Who cares? Keep doing your presidential thing.
Live and let live.
We're the economy's
govern and
booming.
let govern. But okay. So my thought was this report of the whole pie of like scandalous facts that probably surround Trump in Russia. This is probably the narrowest sliver you could ever imagine.
Well, this is the part that
I did read the 35-page version, and it does go into in depth into his financial dealings. But this is like one or two agents' perspectives with a few inside. I know, but
people. But here's the thing, and
there's more.
This
coming.
is essentially the problem.
I think there's more coming.
This is essentially the problem. Is that the way that the report or the information they were looking for, originally at least, was being determined by the employer, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that the report is actually looking at the most damaging thing in terms of what might be the most damaging for the American public. It's probably what's the most damaging for his fucking chances as a political candidate. That's the only problem. Like, for instance, that report probably ignores a lot of maybe even other evidence that could be more important, but less, like we said, salacious. Because that's some salacious shit, baby.
Salacious.
So
I interrupt this broadcast. Donald Trump just tweeted.
Oh, boy. Oh, you get that tweet automatically every time he tweets?
His specific tweets, not the satirical of Donald
Here we
Trump.
go, breaking news.
No, it's just like you can tell he finally got his phone back after the press conference.
Oh, is he tweeting about just random shit?
Yep. We had a great news conference at Trump Tower today.
Yeah, great.
Not bloody likely.
That's not how everyone sees it.
Actually, it was like a gong show.
It was a gong
show.
Disaster.
A couple of fake capital news organizations were there, like CNN. But the people truly get what's going on. No punctuation at the end, so maybe another tweet's locked in the chamber right now. I don't know.
He's never been good with punctuation.
He had a bunch of props on stage today. Those manila folders. So apparently those folders were heavily guarded by his fake security and his so-called staff.
They're fucking empty, dude.
It's a prop.
Yeah.
It's a prop. Just like bringing out his lawyer was a prop. Just like pointing out CNN and calling them out and saying, no, I'm not going to answer your question. Don't be rude. You're what did he call him? A fake news organization or something. It's all fucking diversion tactics. It's all show. And you know what? We're in store for at least 4 years, unless something happens. I'm not gonna predict anything today about what's gonna happen or what could happen. But I think we all have a few ideas in our mind of how this could end. That's not a threat. But we do have ideas.
I think it's pretty fucking clear from everybody that it's not 8 days in. And it's a disaster.
It's negative 8 days. We're like,
apparently he made a comment about the pharmaceutical industry. And while the pharmaceutical industry was really excited at the prospect of Trump, who said, I'm going to pass those I'm going to kill that red tape, he also started to criticize him so bad that the market lost many billions of dollars. I mean, I think that Fortune.com estimated like $24 billion worth of fucking money. But of course, it's... what is that valuation and is it really just a market correction? I don't know. But it's every time Donald Trump talks about a business, there's actually now an algorithm that tracks his Twitter based on what companies he'll talk so that you can be notified in case you might need to sell, because the man is the most dangerous voice for the market in the history of presidents.
Well, it's funny. I think there are companies, and there will be companies, who want to play it safe and not piss off the president. They just want to stay off his fucking radar. And maybe they'll cancel a factory in Mexico, or they'll do things to just play it safe for a few years, because he could shut down a business by tweeting. That's crazy. That's quite interventionist for a Republican. But what's funny is many of the companies who have announced moves to cancel a Mexico project or open a new plant in the States have received praise from Trump, and have then the next day come back and said, we didn't do it because of you. Now, are they hedging? Are they playing it safe? Are they, just saying, oh, well, Trump was smart to say so, but we had the plan in the books anyway, so everybody's covered and no one loses face? I don't know.
It's hard to say because... See,
you could be
like Toyota, who tried to, and they may have been successful at that, use a jibe back at the president, because he was all like, president-elect, as they like to say, because they're still in denial. It's like he was criticizing, they're moving a plant to Mexico, and I'm like, well, first of all, they're a Japanese company, so they don't fucking need to open a plant in your country if they don't want to. But they were also saying, listen, Mexicans are buying automobiles now too, bitches. They're not this broke-ass country you think they are.
They're not just there as a feeder industry for the U.S. Au contraire.
Right.
The other diversion, there's a whole bunch of fucking bananas, crazy things that happened during the press conference. That's all over the news. Bananas. But I think the strategy was also to do something so insane during the press conference that it stole the spotlight from two of the most controversial appointments. Rex Tillerson, who apparently had some shell corporation dealing with Russia, right? And some big deals going on. And Jeff Sessions, the guy who spent apparently a pretty good amount of time denouncing the KKK, because that was a question.
Well, he thinks he's a civil rights leader.
He lost an appointment in his early career because of the perception of KKK involvement, and that doesn't come out of nowhere, really. He also listed apparently he submitted paperwork of in his mind, what were his 10 top cases of his career as an attorney general, and a lot of them were civil rights cases, and it was Senator Franklin apparently who called bullshit on that. Like, he was not involved. He may have pushed a paper across a desk or something, but he was not involved. Those were not significant cases vis-a-vis his career.
Well, look, okay. I mean,
so that's a diversion.
You don't want to really...
Those are two controversial figures.
I'm not going to surprise anybody here by saying that I doubt that any single nominee will be qualified for their position.
Right.
Like MSNBC has already identified at least a dozen appointees that have direct, like if they actually had any prosecutorial balls, it would be like, you're not allowed to promise positions during your election bid to people and then give it to them because that's. But this is clearly what's happened so many times, in fact. But this is the part where nobody knows how to deal with
the nepotism laws, the divesting from businesses. He made a very clear point to say the president
I'm not
is
having
exempt.
a blind trust.
Yeah, and he's appointing his sons, and he won't talk to his sons, and if they
Of
do a
course
bad job,
not,
they'll say you're fired, and it's
Sure he will.
such baloney. Like, are people just exhausted with politics to the point where they just don't care?
No,
right now?
I think that what you're noticing is that we covered this in one of our other shows, is that when there is uncertainty about like when we transition from one form of government to the next, when we transition from imperialism to, I guess, what we have now, which you call democracies, but are closer to constitutional or republics or constitutional monarchies, depending on what country you are. You're not really democracies. But there was still a kind of battle when you had fascism, communism, like, after the Second World War, or the First World War even. You had all the battle for all of these new ideologies. This is what you're seeing now. Except for now there's all these people who are like, oh man, it was good? Authoritarianism. It's like, look at Argentina right now. There are people who are like, man, I miss the Menem days. Carlos Menem, who basically stole billions of dollars from the economy. He was one of the worst leaders that anybody had, but they're like, well, it's better than what we got now, which was confusion.
Well, see, that's like the monkey brain hijacking your fucking shit. In your multi-million person society, you're relying on the biggest ape.
We need a strong monkey.
We need a strong monkey to sort out this nonsense.
And throw shit at our allies.
Right. Who cares? As long as he's loud.
Throw all the poop.
Throw all the poop.
We don't care if we're covered in poo, as long as our enemy is choking on their own poo. We shall be the victors.
We need System 2 thinking here, but we're getting System 1 through and through.
Yeah, and
people vote with their gut.
Well, but you know what? Part of that is the fault of that is that everybody during the last American election, and we even had this in our own country here in Canada, is that everybody talked about how you vote based on your values, and this is a problem.
That's madness.
That's a problem.
Why not just vote on practical issues and have candidates lay out a platform with the top 10 issues of the day and a plan to solve them?
Now, what the fuck is this? No, see, that's still part of the same broken idea. Let's get one guy to make appointments.
Well, yeah, it's
Boo.
If you have to vote on a guy, I'd rather do it that way, even though it's kind of flawed. I'd rather vote on issues day in, day out, and just have civil servants execute. You don't need a president. Maybe you could elect a foreign dignitary to play politics on the world stage or something, but they could be a civil servant too.
Well, look.
Anyway,
we're not going to come up with a fucking solution for mankind's problem this episode. But what we can say is that
peeing on a hotel bed will incur a cleanup fee of at least 150 rubles.
I sort of wonder where the American public can go from here, because I was going to say that you haven't had this bad of a president since Harding, but Harding was just his scandals were from having booze and poker parties in the fucking White House. Ooh. Big fucking deal, man. Yeah, prohibition. You were being a bit of a fucking naughty man.
Naughty.
You weren't shitting on a bed because some fucking black guy stayed in there the night before. You didn't do
when
that.
You put it that way. How did he get elected?
Jake, you boil things down so hard. I'm basically tasting nothing but this horrible metal taste in my mouth. Yeah.
Whoa.
That's the copper.
That's dark.
That's the taste of copper in your mouth. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, you think? Yeah. This is turning into one of those mega episodes. We might have to cut it out.
Nah, beep. It's all good.
Okay, we're keeping the train on the track, so we're gonna keep going.
It's all good. Look, one of our topics we've already covered.
All right.
So,
quick mention. I think we want to track this one too. You gotta ask,
what's the plan?
What is Russia's plan? What's in it for them? And so there's this book which in English comes out to Foundations of Geopolitics. It's kind of like the Project for a New American Century. It's a doctrine book that sort of stemmed from military command and is therefore read by military command in Russia. And the wiki describes. My Cyrillic is pretty bad. The wiki describes it as a sophisticated program of subversion, destabilization, and disinformation spearheaded by Russian special services in the United States. And it doesn't just deal with the United States, but it outlines sort of the, 50-year plan for Russia to get back to their good old days, to make Russia great again. You know what I mean? Like, why is Trump's hat...
But I'm like,
have the logo?
Dear Russians, with all fucking respect, when were you ever great? When did the world look at you and say, how does Russia live? And how can I live more like a fucking Russian? How about 0%?
Well, here's a little synopsis.
Of the people?
This is from the book, basically, paraphrasing. Russia should use its special forces within the borders of the United States to fuel instability and separatism, for instance, provoking Afro-American racists as a means to creating instability. Russia should introduce geopolitical disorder into internal American activity, encouraging all kinds of separatism and ethnic, social, and racial conflicts, actively supporting all dissident movements, extremist, racist, and sectarian groups, thus destabilizing internal political processes in the U.S. It would also make sense to simultaneously support isolationist tendencies in American politics. It goes on to talk about outlining goals for reworking the political dynamic, the world order in general and in Europe, making Germany the center of European power, which you could say is already happening. And
it happened like fucking 10 years ago.
Yeah. But also forcing Britain to separate from Europe. Like, these are all check marks. If you think about what's going on in the world, Brexit, these are all check marks in this long list of, bullet points in this doctrine document. I think we're going to see more from this book.
Sure.
Come up over the next few years.
Although, here's the part that I want to stress is that it reminds me, like, the same way that the Project for a New American Century effectively guaranteed America's bankruptcy, the same thing awaits Russia. Because I think that what most of these geopolitical clowns don't realize this is that you're right. You can go around, you can kind of create destability, which will influence your allies. But what you don't realize is that in that instance where you think that as my allies sort of weaken as I grow stronger, there is this law that I have discovered. I don't know if it's in fucking Machiavelli's The Prince, but this seems to me a fucking universal law of politics, is that as you grow stronger, so do your opponents. Because the thing about trying to destabilize and trying to be one of those big dogs,
it's an arms
is that
race.
now you're going to be the evil America. You see, there's all these countries that always needed a bad guy. Yeah. And for a long time, man, America's the easy bad guy.
What would North Korea be without the bad guy? Like,
it really
they
would be
define
nothing.
The United States essentially defines North Korea.
I mean, it's like a good movie. You can't have a fucking good movie without a good villain. And the thing is, Russia's like, I want to be that villain. And I'm like, you know what, Russia? I mean, like, have you really looked inside of your country? Have you ever seen one building that didn't have a fucking broken window back home?
Do your people look
Jesus Christ
happy? And
I've never seen a bigger pile of miserable assholes in my fucking life.
Nourished.
Seriously.
Like, is this a place that wants to export any culture? Because we don't want it.
And I know that sort of, this comes from the time back when Russia was really lost after the fall of communism. They were like, man, we miss a guy like Stalin because he really gave us a central purpose. And you're like, under him, your population was reduced by at least a fifth, if not a quarter. And you're like, oh man, I miss those days. If he hadn't came in and killed your entire population, you'd probably be a lot larger and a lot happier.
Appeal to the System 1 strong apeism, and you'll get the vote. That's essentially what Make America Great is all about. But it's also like
the reason why your country fell apart is because it was all a lie. It was all a terrible lie. Like, there are places in Russia that the reason that people died is just because, you couldn't make enough food. We couldn't get into them.
Couldn't make enough food.
We
there
just
wasn't
couldn't do
even
it.
food to steal.
It's like, because at the time what they had tried to do is they were like, we're going to create this whole communal farming business. People are going to share tools. And no, the fuck they aren't, guy.
Yeah, right.
Did not work out. All right? And so you didn't produce enough food. And you didn't have a capitalist system. Like, do you know why North Korea is not starving to death? Because they've instituted capitalism, secret capitalism, in the so-called last communist bastion.
Yeah.
The only way to not fucking starve is to play the game. And so they played the game. And this is why sort of Russia got to not starve itself to death. But now what? They want to go back to what game? Like, I'm sorry, but you don't have the political will and structure to manage all of these little fiat states you want back.
Well, if you try to understand the psyche, it must have something to do with adopting the perks of a capitalist society, money and food and fancy cars, while maintaining the prior glory of being a world power.
The Russians and the
That
Americans...
must be like the end goal.
The Russians and the Americans have the same fucking fantasy. 1950 was the best year for America and for Russia. Because look, Russia before the end of the Second World War, Russia had lost the First World War because they ran out of it. They just fucking left it. And then they had to deal with their own civil war and the death of fucking millions of people. And their treasure, all of their gold was gone. It was basically hidden and it's never been fucking found. So how does a country whose currency at the time was reliant on gold, who has no fucking gold left, how do they handle a war? So that's not the glory days, right? Oh, so let's go back. Before the First World War, what's the last war they had? Well, with the Japanese. Yeah, and they lost. They lost! They got their ass kicked by the Japanese!
Ouch.
And then before then, the Crimean War. Oh yeah, well that was basically everybody else trying to make sure they didn't pick up the Ottoman Empire. So you have British and fucking French allied with Muslims, who they despise at this time, to defeat the Russians in the Crimean War. And do you know how most deaths occur in the Crimean War? Disease. It's not from fucking firing bullets. It's from everyone dying of, like, dysentery or whatever. So, yeah! Make Russia great again!
Like, Russia knows desperation. They know it. And there's some old saying, I wish it was on the top of my head, but... you don't go to war with Russia in the winter or something like that.
Oh my god, it's two fucking things. It's one, it's Napoleon. And you know why Napoleon lost? It's not because of the fucking Russian winter. It's because the Russians kept retreating. They actually followed Sun Tzu's Art of War. They retreated for over a year and a half. He had Moscow. Napoleon had Moscow. He owned it. The fucking Russians had already retreated, but the problem was that he was spread out too thin, and he didn't have enough fucking supplies. And by then, trust me, Napoleon was tired of war. Even the whole war with Russia was not his fucking choice. In his last years, every war that he fought was a defensive war. Every fucking European nation was already allied against Napoleon. So if you want to say, oh, they kicked Napoleon's ass, your country's too big, too cold, and you just ran all day long. If you want to call that a victory, then sure, let me pat you on the back and say that's a victory. And then, if you want to talk about why did fucking Hitler lose the war with Russia, well, that has everything to do with where he sent his backup when Russia was in trouble. So, you might not know about this, but during Operation Barbarossa, when he was fucking attacking Russia, his allies in the Ukraine were being attacked. So he diverted all of his tanks and his fucking major fighting force away from like Russia's high command. He was days away from fucking taking Russia and killing the fucking head of the snake, but he decided to keep his treaty with his Russian Nazi allies called the White Immigrants and try to save their asses in Ukraine. So, Russia, like, you came so close to getting your fucking asses kicked. I really honestly feel like Russia has an inflated sense of what their history was. Like, they must think that they were some great nation that controlled most of the world. And I'm like, really, that's a tiny pocket of history, and you just took it over from the Nazis. That's all you did. You just basically gave it a new paint color. Actually, not even. The Nazis loved red. Just gave it a side of yellow. Your side color was slightly different.
Lame.
What is this noise?
Donald Trump keeps tweeting. I'm sorry.
Good Lord.
He just retweeted some religious nobody.
What?
It's morning in America again. Thank you, Donald Trump. It's actually 11:30 p.m. New York time.
Can you just do a search for Father McCouglin and see if it's good, if it was Morning in America, the name of his show. But yes, in the 1930s, this Father McCouglin, a Catholic priest, because the Catholics were very fascist at the time. They had already allied themselves with the fascists, and then I think it was 1939 with the Reichskonkordat. So yeah, they were, or 35. I think they were pretty tight with them, and he used to have these radio shows where he would just basically just talk, bash the Jews or whatever. And a very influential TV producer who was then a child, named Norman Lear, had built his own little radio, and that's the first thing he ever heard on his little radio. He heard of a fucking racist, demagogue.
Love it.
Who was saying that he was a cockroach and should be, persecuted.
Good stuff.
Yep.
The history of hate runs deep.
It's a long, history, my friend. I mean, that's humanity too. There's a big ball of hate,
Yep.
And I should know. I mean, I'm great at hate. I'm fucking fantastic at it. Speaking of hate, I want to hate on something. I want to talk about animated movies. I want to talk about, specifically, you asked me this question. Actually, before we get in the animated movie, I'll just do a little segment. You asked me this question before. You said, what's wrong with Disney? And I told you Disney is ruining movies. And you asked me to fucking explain myself, sir.
Explain yourself. I know nothing about this.
And I'm going to explain it in a very simple way. The reason that Disney is ruining movies is because of something called the cinematic universe. This started with superhero movies, the Marvel movies. All right, like the Iron Man movies, Thor, Captain America, Ant-Man, all of these movies. What happened was that when Marvel was making their movie, they had this grandiose plan. They're like, we're going to create something like 25 movies, and they're all going to be interlinked and, related to one another. And I mean, this had never been fucking done here. And the thing with these Marvel movies is that they all kind of worked. They were, they were competently made movies. They were somewhat fun or whatever, but the vision of it worked. And so these movies have been making billions of dollars. Now, everybody and their goddamn uncle wants to do this. And in fact, Marvel, or Disney, that owns Marvel and that now owns Star Wars, has decided that the cinematic universe is the best way to fucking make money. So when you make a movie now, you don't really care about the plot of this movie. You care about the plot of every other fucking movie that you gotta fit into this motherfucker. And let me ask you a question. How good is a movie when there's 20 other thousand little plot points cooking? How about garbage?
Brutal.
How about hot fucking garbage?
Brutal.
Yeah. So not only do you have the Marvel movies, which are slated to go on till about 2025, there's going to be 6 Avenger movies just related to this whole kind of 6 Avenger movies.
2025 was supposed to be amazing.
I know.
That's an amazing setting year.
But that's okay. So that's just the Marvel movies. You're also going to get countless Star Wars movies that are also part of this whole cinematic universe. You're going to get Ghostbuster movies that have also decided we need a cinematic universe. You're going to get the DC Justice League Flash movie. Like I said, up until 2025. The movies you're going to have to watch, they've already been decided. It's like your entire fucking future has been predicted, and it's because every superhero movie makes a lot of money, and they're all related to one another, so you have to watch each one. So each one is bound to make a ton of money, right? Because you got to watch the other one. It's like a fucking trading card collection of movies. And that's what you have now. So fuck plot. Fuck characters. The most important thing is that we're all going towards this big thing that we're making, and you're going to love it, and if you don't, fuck you.
And if you don't, we make a new universe.
Yeah. There you go. So that's basically how Marvel really is destroying movies. The movies are not about what like the one singular film. It's just a fucking little cog in this massive money-making wheel, and you're the idiot showing up with your fucking wallet and being like, here, just take it all.
Why don't they just feck off?
Because there's no other way to make money with movies in such a sure way.
What's going to happen when they run out of comic books?
Actually, what's going to happen when people just suddenly get fucking sick?
Are we going to have a
tired?
Bazooka Joe, like, trilogy? I mean, come on.
God damn it.
What's happening?
Probably by now.
Probably, but
you know what's going to happen is eventually there will be fatigue. Every movie genre has this, even musicals. Musicals in the fucking 30s were massive. You didn't even make anything other than a fucking musical.
I'm fatigued and I don't even watch any of this crap.
Yeah. So there will be a time where what will happen is that because there's so much money invested in these movies, that these movies cost between $150 and $200 million.
Garbage.
Now if a movie makes $400 million at the box office, that's only about $200 million of profit for the movie studio. So if it costs you $200 million and it makes $400 million, you only made your money back, and maybe not even.
Well, 100% profit in any other business is pretty good.
No, that's making your money back.
It costs $200. You make
$400, but you don't keep $400. $200 million of that goes to everybody else who's taking a cut at your shit. Movie theaters, companies you have to make fucking alliances with.
Profit.
So you only get half of the money of the box office sales.
So
if your movie make
doing business, what is it? Half? Is it a 50-50 split?
The easiest way is to calculate half. So if your movie made $1 billion, you only really made $500 million in terms of the overall production and profit.
But the theaters have fucking popcorn and milk duds.
That's not counted in the profit of a movie. In fact, for the most part,
gouging.
For the most part, because movie theaters have to make deals with companies, most of the time, let's say there's 10 movies that a company is going to release. Only one of them is really going to make money, and the other 9 are actually going to be losers.
Right. But so, they don't. They'd rather lose less. So what do? They lock these cinema companies into playing all 10 movies?
All of the movies.
I got you.
So now you understand?
You know what? Like, if I were a movie house, I would just do what Netflix is doing, man. Skip all that bullshit.
You can't. Then you won't be able to show these movies. What you don't understand, B, is that movie theater companies don't make money because there used to be a time in the movie industry where middle movies, this would be your romantic comedies, your animated movies, they wouldn't be blockbusters. I mean, the blockbuster didn't fucking exist until Jaws. But they made profit, and you would invest in them and so on.
Well, I don't know too many
people. The last movie the middling movie that to make money was Kung Fu Panda 3. And the only reason it did that is because it's already a very well-known intellectual property. Every other fucking movie that is being made right now is a loser. So when a movie theater company, be it Sony, Warner Brothers, or Disney, when they release a movie, a superhero movie not only has to make its money back, it has to make profit for every other fucking loser movie you're making. So they're so dependent on the profit of these that as soon as there's fucking market fatigue, the entire industry could fucking crumble.
Seems pretty fragile. I mean, I thought Kung Fu Panda 2 was the better. No, I didn't see any of them.
Why don't you shut up?
I didn't see.
You shut up about movies right now.
No, but like people just want to watch movies on their huge screens at home, and Netflix is the future, or the Netflix model is the future.
But you see,
why do people go to theaters?
That's a North American view of things.
Yeah, you're right.
The rest of the world is watching a lot of movies, pal.
You're right. The theater experience in, say, East Asia is way better than North America. It's primo.
But it's not even just that.
They were doing reserved seats and like motion activated seats.
No, it's not even just that. It's just that the theater is dead here.
It is dead.
We killed it.
I only know
fucking killed it.
One person who regularly goes to see movies, and that's not good.
But
I know a lot of people.
There's a third reason, though, apart from the fact that movie theaters kind of killed it, and the fact that Marvel Cinematic Universes made movies crappy. There's a third reason why you don't want to go see movies and why you don't find movies compelling. And that reason is that because of the fact that most movie goers are now no longer North Americans, and that market is actually smaller now.
Right.
Then movies are not written for you anymore.
Like China has a big appetite for Hollywood. movies.
But they only allow a limited amount of movies.
Want less.
So, what happens is that if China says we're only going to allow 10 blockbuster movies a year to fucking go through, that means that to qualify as that blockbuster movie, you need to eliminate anything in your movie that might upset Chinese audiences or might alienate them as well. You need to include elements in your story that include Chinese fucking people. That's why you have scenes that'll suddenly happen in China, for instance.
No, or you have a popular Chinese soft drink and a big gulp scene,
or there'll be scenes in movies that'll be filmed specifically for Chinese audiences.
Yeah.
Because you will make 3 or 4 times more money now in a Chinese market than you will in an American market. In fact, one of the movies that did the best
China
internationally
to spend that money and make that money.
The best movie, the movie that made the most money internationally and did the poorest domestically was the movie Warcraft. You know that stupid game that people play?
They made a movie?
They made a stupid-ass movie that sucks.
Man.
And fucking China ate it up. It made $100 million here and $500 million overseas.
Damn. Okay.
So that's why movies now, or at least blockbuster-style movies, because I still believe that at its heart, independent American movies,
art films,
are still amazing. But blockbusters are now garbage. I mean, it's not like... In the day when you and I were teenagers, a blockbuster would be like Jurassic Park. A well-made movie, well-written, well-directed.
Could still watch it today.
Still fucking watchable.
Still holds up, though.
And these days, a blockbuster is the Warcraft movie, which in 10 years will look unbelievably fake, has no fucking characters or stories, and is really just pandering. It's just garbage. Just garbage.
Yep.
It has no vision.
Yep.
Okay, last topic. I'm going to talk about animated movies that you should just avoid. And this relates back to, why movies are terrible these days, honestly. There is a animated movie on Netflix called Justice League. I believe it's Gods and Monsters. I urge you to avoid this movie, okay? Just boycott fucking all these adult animated movies that are they seem like they're partially targeted to kids.
I've heard of the Justice League. Mm-hmm. What is this nonsense?
So basically, what this is
DC.
It's like an alternate universe where Superman is the son of General Zod rather than Kal-El, and he's raised by Mexican illegal immigrants. I'm not even joking.
What is this? Baloney.
I'm not even joking.
This is ridiculous.
This is a Superman that is raised by Mexican immigrants.
Okay, well, I mean, fine, but that's not Superman.
And so it's they like to do these parallel universe things.
It's so contrived. Superman's contrived too, but
buddy, I mean,
he's an icon.
All comic books are contrived. They're just looking for new ideas. Boy. But no, I'm not even going to criticize that. In fact, I thought that was the most interesting thing about it, where Lex Luthor was not a bad guy, where Superman and the Justice League were a bunch of killers or whatever. You know what? I didn't even think that was bad. But here's what's bad. The movie looks like it was fucking made for kids.
Yeah.
But there is so much death, killing, murder, even from the supposed good guys. Like, did you ever watch a movie where there was no good guy? There's like this anti-hero, right? Like a person who's kills people, but they're not necessarily
like
a good guy.
Like a Punisher or
Deadpool or something like that, right?
Yeah.
These movies are sometimes tongue-in-cheek, but they know that they have no hero, right? They're not about having any redemption. Now imagine that you decided to make an animated movie where the main good guys had murdered, I gotta say maybe 50 people in the entire, throughout the whole movie. And at the end, they're still the good guys.
What?
It is such a betrayal of kind of what comic books are really supposed to be about, which is they're supposed to be a kind of fun, lighthearted interpretation of good versus evil, right?
Yeah, but they're also supposed to be fuel for bad movies that make $1 billion an acceptable amount of money.
Well, but these are animated movies, so they have a very specific target. See, because here's the thing. Animated movies, especially from DC Comics are popular because DC's not willing to spend a lot of money to take chances on live action movies, but they are willing to take chances on animated movies.
Okay.
So they're willing to have sex or mostly violence involving characters like Batman or Superman. I mean, like in this comic book movie I'm telling you about, Mexican Superman, or I'm sorry, illegal immigrant Superman murders people left and right.
What?
I mean, they're bad guys, quote unquote.
Low cost.
But he's like, movie. The just fucking kill and like we're just, solving the world's problems. And while in most comics, like when you do that, when like Superman starts killing people, it's supposed to be like, ooh, look, he's turned dark, right? But in this one, again, like I said, at the end of it, he's still kind of the good guy, and nobody cares that Superman and his team of fucking psycho murderers, which includes a Batman who's a vampire who sucks the blood out of people. Does this sound like it's for kids, dude? Like this
it does not.
It's animated like it is for kids, but meanwhile it's targeted for what? Neck beard fucking 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds? Like, this is what I don't like about today's society, where we're infantilizing ourselves, but we're adultifying our infantilization. Where we want Batman and Superman to be killers because we want to see gritty superhero movies. I'm like, these are kid stories. Stick with the fucking kid themes, you assholes, and stop having so much murder.
Mickey Mouse had a
threesome,
a brush with brush with the law.
Yeah,
some ambiguous sexual experience,
sure.
And he has a court date coming up for something bad he did.
It's basically the equivalent.
Wow.
And you're like, well, somebody might say, wow, what a brave interpretation of Mickey Mouse.
Brave in the sense it's a bad investment.
It's for me, it just demonstrates the fact that we've allowed, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that if you keep a kind of childlike version of yourself. But don't fucking corrupt that with your adult needs. It's Superman, it's Batman, they should just be having fun, nobody should be dying, and if you need to see a fucking movie where that happens, check yourself. Why don't you just do it where it involves characters that weren't designed for kids? Huh? If you want to see a super powerful character kill people, just make your own character, and don't fucking poison this shit for kids, because if you're a kid and you're fucking 10 years old and you love Batman and Superman, and you fucking watch this movie, I really feel bad. Like I'm like, you're gonna be a little twisted, kid, because your favorite hero is like killing everybody all day long, man. And as far as I'm concerned, that's some hot garbage. Shame, fucking shame on you, everybody.
Methane is wafting off that pile.
I'm not even gonna blame Warner Brothers for creating it. I'm blaming everybody else who demanded this kind of thing and who said, do you know what I need for my animated superhero movies? More grittiness.
Yeah, you know what? Enough of this blaming big media or small media.
No, they just give you what you want.
Blame
big consumer.
All you motherfuckers
big
with bad
consumer.
Taste. Blame the bad taste minions.
Blame big consumer, which you're fucking part of, you dickhole. Oh, it's the media that fed me this. Yeah, you said I'm so hungry for it. Shove it down my throat.
I'm kind of ahead of my time. I take no part in this media business.
You're not ahead. You're literally Amish in your fucking times.
Completely Amish about movies.
You're disconnected.
Right.
And we all look forward to your documentary on something that you're obviously very unfamiliar about. All right, I think that pretty much wraps up our show. What were we at, 2 hours?
God damn it. We're at an hour and 24 seconds.
Oh, see, that's not bad. Everybody loves an hour.
An hour and 24 minutes, excuse me.
There you go. Yeah. All right. I think that pretty much wraps up. You got anything else you want to say before we go? Did we cover everything we said we were going to cover? I think we did.
I think we have, and there's a lot more to say about Trump, but we got 4 years minimum.
Dude, man, we got to be rich off him, so we got plenty to say.
Plenty to say.
And if you and honestly, if you're one of those 10 people that listen to us and you have some requests, we're taking requests.
New website brewing. I'm just gonna teaser. New website brewing
with the podcast RSS and
finally solving a lot of the bullshit problems that have plagued websites.
We want to apologize everybody for that, but you know what? It takes a long time to figure out what solution you're going to use, and I didn't want to sort of start and then start over. But I'm happy to say that we finally figured out a solution. So good news for you, motherfuckers.
Yeah, you'll see it soon.
All right. Well, with that, my number is 14.
What are you?
What are you? Well, my number is 14.
I am the letter B.
See you later, everybody.